If you're catching down right now.
Just put a summary that I started at 9, got 2, they're in this, so there's an hour gap. So if you're not around when the hour gap.
So it was PO box on the no, but I didn't see. I think I see it.
There be that time of this week.
Okay. All right, everybody, 6 p.m. I would like to go ahead and reconvene the meeting. The last one went long, so we'll see if we can be more efficient this time. Thank you all for coming back. Thank you to the public for being here. Thank you for the material that was brought to us. Appreciate it. If I can have folks be quiet so that people around here can speak and be able to have everyone else around here, that'd be awesome. Thank you. All right, so I'm reconvening the meeting at 6 p.m. on May 15th. And I'm going to ask Minnie to call the roll.
Councilor Urban.
Here.
Councilor Mike. Councilor Lambert.
Here.
Councilor Mary.
Here.
Councilor Settlemeyer.
Here.
Councilor Wilson.
Here.
Mayor Solsby.
Here.
Amber David.
Here.
Alex Streeter.
Present.
Bernie Donner.
Here.
Greg Engel.
Here.
Darlene Sayers.
Here.
Daniel Solsby.
Present.
Johanna Lee.
Here. All right, item 3, public comment, request for appropriations. So I'm going to open the floor for public comment, request for appropriations. All right, we have the first person to come up is Bruce Kelch.
Could be on this side of you over there. So on behalf of the Friends of the Library, and the patrons of the library, I want to thank the city for its past and present and future support of the library. It's a lot to the community, and I think the city's commitment to continuing the library services is a real statement on the value and importance it's being for the library. I remember the Woodard Library. Our public library was there. And there's someone recently gave me a great quote from Mr. Woodard about library. He said that a city without a library is like a workman without his boots. And the commitment to the community to having a library is so vital to the life and culture of the city. Provides access for everybody. And public libraries play such an important role in our community. It's a beautiful building. I remember, like many of you take your kids to the library for story time and check out books every week. You return them and come back and continue that history and that tradition of the importance of libraries and literacy. Recently, Friends Library and the partnership with the library, we've done a lot with literacy. The summer reading program is coming up. It's going to provide a great opportunity for the community to be promoting reading and literacy. And I thank you again for all that you've done to support the library and continue with it. Thank you.
All right, next is Joy Settlemeyer.
Hello again. I feel like I could say some of the same things that I said to you Tuesday night. Thanks for the support, and then also just recognizing that the library supports all ages of and programming that they have. I remember Jim and our 2 sons, when they moved the library from Old Woodard Library, we lined up with little book. They handed out the books to move us from the old library into the current, and how excited our kids were to be part of that. And so I just feel like it's important that we continue to support it, and I wanted to add my voice to the others to let you know that the community appreciates the support of this. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, next is Matthew Hewlett of the Spirit of BMD.
Hi, thank you all for having me.
I just want to take a minute to say thank you for considering helping the Bohemia Mind Days Festival and Spirit of Bohemia Mind Days as a whole. To briefly round it off, the letter I attached in your guys' packets outlines that the funds would be directly allocated for electrical and infrastructure needs of the festival, but the fact of the matter is, and that is still true, but all of the funds that go through our organization are to better Cottage Grove through our youth programs, as well as our 12-month of the year education programs. We have a program that we've started titled Bohemia City Leaders that's outlined for high school aged kids to be able to get confidence in their leadership skills, as well as helping younger kids take an interest in history through play and through appropriate learning. Our Little Kid program is the Future Bohemia Citizens program, and that is directly designed to give kids pride in their community here in Cottage Grove at a young age, to inspire them to move toward charitable service as they get older. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. All right, next is Dan Libertson from the Doherty Pools.
Hi, thank you very much for hearing me. I just briefly want to say that my wife and I are both seniors with fairly severe arthritis, and swimming at the Doherty pool facilities is positively the best exercise for us. We would really regret the loss of it. So we also know many other people who are in the same boat as us. So we're hoping that the city will find funding to keep the pools open to the general public. That's really all I need to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, next we move into review and discussion of the 2025-26 proposed budget document. And there will be a presentation as part of this, enterprise funds, but we're going to start off where we left off. And I don't know that we rounded out the police departments.
Well, good evening, Chair, members of the committee. Amber said we kind of left off our discussion on Tuesday night about this department. And so the chief and I just kind of wanted to give everybody one more opportunity. If there's any other questions or any other information we can provide about the police department budget, we're happy to do it.
And the annual report was sent out to everybody. So hopefully anyone interested in stats or metrics had a chance to look at that. Thank you for providing that. I think I had one other remaining comment, which I had shared with you before, which is I am all in support of fully funding the department and as it's proposed. My concern is we can put a lot towards fully funding, but how do we ensure there's deterrence and accountability for those folks that actually commit the crimes? And I don't know if there's adequate attention or funding to ensure accountability of folks, because your officers don't want to chase their tails and have to keep seeing the same people over and over and over again. And I don't think that generates the type of culture we want, where people can just get away with things and we just keep paying for other people to catch and release them. So that's my main concern, my main comment.
So, I mean, I can provide some context to that in how the police department fits into all of that. There's different aspects of the criminal justice system. So you have the corrections side of it, you have the courts, and then you have police department, and you also have parole and probation and those types of things. You have other services. So what we're asking for specifically in the general fund for the police department is to be able to fund the police department to do all of those things that you have discussed and that you all have said that that's what you want to see from your police department. As far as what happens after we arrest them, that goes to the court system and how the courts are currently structured. So in Cottage Grove, we have a municipal court, and in Lane County, that's fairly common. So it's not in other parts of the state, but that's a system that's been in place in Lane County for a long time, and it continues to function that way. The challenge becomes when you arrest somebody for misdemeanor and the case is prosecuted here in our municipal court and you don't have a way to hold them pretrial or to book them on misdemeanor charges and get them arraigned in a municipal court system. So kind of having a municipal court and all of that went hand in hand with having a jail or having some sort of contract in place for jail services or correction services. So what I've been working on in many aspects over the last year and a half is trying to figure out how we can refine those processes to make sure that there is accountability. So I own a piece of it, but the process does not belong completely to the police department. So the courts are funded, they have their own fund. There's a judge, there's a prosecutor. The judge reports directly to the city council. So I don't direct the judge to do anything or direct the city prosecutor to do anything. I've worked to try to set up some meetings and to kind of look at our protocols and have some sort of cooperative agreements with the district attorney's office for getting our cases prosecuted. The district attorney, we just talked yesterday, in fact, and he continues to support and understand the needs of what's going on, the uniqueness of what's going on in Cottage Grove. When it comes to what are we going to do and what the ultimate accountability is, I have some ideas and I've shared those ideas with the different stakeholders, but ultimately, how all of that works is not something that I have total control over. So, but I do think we're at a much better place today than we were a year ago. One of the things that we've worked out as far as misdemeanor prosecutions go is with the district attorney's office. Specifically, if we know that there are repeat offenders, and one of the big issues that we had was that people just wouldn't show up to court, because if you don't show up to court, you can never have your case adjudicated and you are never sentenced. So there's some people who are repeat offenders who understand that system very well. And so what we've done is in those instances, the officers have the ability to arrest those folks and book them into the Lane County Jail on misdemeanor charges that would normally be handled in our municipal court. And then we are requesting prosecution on those cases from the district attorney's office. So those cases then get prosecuted in the circuit court of Lane County. And from there on, if that case is prosecuted by the DA's office, if they fail to appear, the warrant doesn't come out of the municipal court. The warrant comes out of the circuit court. And so then those folks, if they're picked up on a fail to appear warrant, they're booked back in jail up there. And they also have the ability to sentence them and to serve their time in the county jail there as well. So that's one of the things that we've done that, and we've already used that process successfully with a couple of different people. Now, ultimately, at the end of the day, we're still talking about misdemeanor cases, and we're still talking about them serving jail time of anywhere from 3 to 10 days. Sometimes on more egregious cases, they may get 30 days in jail. One of the people that we've had as a repeat offender, who we've tried to hold them accountable in municipal court, we've held them accountable through the circuit court, and they serve their jail time and they come back and they still do the same thing. So the same misdemeanors are getting committed by this particular person. So there's still that challenge, and those things are well beyond our control locally as well. And I know you guys have heard from the district attorney talking about some of the challenges with the sentencing guidelines that are put in place by the legislature. So I know that that's a lot of information. There's a lot of moving parts to it, and hopefully I answered those questions for you as best I can, and kind of give you an idea of where we're at and what we're doing to try to work on that process, and what I'm doing specifically that's within my control to try to hold those people accountable. Because as I said to you the other night, right, nobody's more frustrated with the lack of accountability than police officers who are out there really working their tails off to do a good job, to make good cases, to arrest people and take bad guys off the street, only to see them not held accountable through the court system. It's extremely frustrating for me and it's extremely frustrating for my staff as well. So,
If I can clarify a little bit and maybe understand, because we were talking about the arraignment process specifically as being an issue, I think I remember you talking, maybe you can get it on video for the arraignment process. But what I'm hearing right now is that people who have been guilty of a number of misdemeanors, when they're picked up again, you're now bringing them to Lane County for holding an arraignment there, as opposed to waiting until the arraignment process here. I've sat in court many times, as you know.
Yeah.
And about a fifth of the people show up who have the citations.
So yeah, what's happening now is if we have those cases and we get all of that information right from the court, from our municipal court, we get that information that this person failed to appear. We call it an FTA, failure to appear. So the FTA 3 or 4 or 5 times, we pick them up again on new charges, and we know they've still got pending charges, right? So say we arrest them a 4th or 5th time for trespassing, knowing that they've still got these pending cases, take them and book them into county jail. We email the intake team at the district attorney's office in Lane County and ask them to review this case and to consider it for prosecution. They take the case and prosecute it. And once they take it, they own it. It's not being prosecuted in municipal court anymore. It's being prosecuted in the circuit court by the district attorney's office. So now if they arraign them in circuit court and then they fail to appear for future court dates, the warrant gets issued out of the circuit court. When it's a circuit court warrant and it's issued out of Lane County, we can book them directly into the Lane County Jail for future arraignments. So anytime we arrest them on a warrant, they've got to be taken again and rearranged, but those will then happen in the Lane County Court, in circuit court.
Is there any movement for arraignment at the local level, though, if you don't have the multiple offenders, the first time, or is there any movement in that direction at this time?
As far, I'm not following yet.
So you had said that they're bringing to, brought to Lane County, the ones who aren't showing up in, for the multiple citations here, you're bringing them to Lane County. But what about the person who has 1 or 2 citations and they're just handed the citation as opposed to arraignment?
So they're giving us.
Originally, is there any movement locally to see about getting Judge
We had
Fisher?
some conversations. So in fact, I just talked to our prosecutor today, Ryan. We had a conversation. There's been some conversations with the sheriff's office, and the sheriff operates the jail, on how that would look to have those cases taken in up there and then an arraignment process up there. But there's a lot of moving parts to that as well. And a lot of that comes down to money, staffing, all of those things. So.
Any other questions, comments?
Thank you, Chair. The concept of accountability is certainly one that I share as well, concern about. When we think about local, consequences for local impact, we think about community service. That's something in my perception that's been somewhat lacking, and of course, staffing, time to be able to do that. The budget as presented, if fully staffed, is there room to have the local police, manage kind of the community service, community beautification work party for people that are, vandalizing and theft and other misdemeanors, quality of life impact crimes?
No. And that's yeah, there's no room in this budget that would take staffing to do that, and that's not accounted for here. That would be something that we would have to look at and figure out staff hours and time and who would do that and manage that program, and that is not in this budget. That's not accounted for in this budget.
Sure. I would just add to that. In the past, and we have still done it a little bit this year, there is an opportunity if people are sentenced to community service. There is an opportunity to work that through Public Works. And we honor that. We try to do that. But it's a really challenging process because they'll make arrangements, individuals will make arrangements to come and do their community service and they don't show up. our staff is sitting around waiting for those folks to show up. And then it takes a staff person to kind of be present in the area to make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I will say we are trying to do that when the judge sentences somebody to community service and it works. But there's a lot of challenges wrapped around that situation.
And one of the other things that we've seen is that is a more, I mean, reasonable for what we can afford is exactly what Faye was talking about. Because the challenge for us is that there's not work for us that they can kind of come and shadow us, right? And so like what Faye's talking about, but there's challenges with that as well, is if they're out, doing park maintenance or things like that, which is stuff that we would have them do for community service. They can work alongside the public works crew, but then again, we're asking them to, in essence, kind of supervise these people as well. It works. Where we run into issues in the police department is we don't have staff, because if you do that, you're pulling somebody off the street to go watch them while they perform this work crew or community service type stuff. So we've also relied on, and the courts have done a good job in the past with relying on community partners as well. I know they've had an agreement with community sharing in the past where they can show up and do their hours there. And they've got work for them that they can have them do there under their supervision, and then they can track their hours and send it back. That's a more realistic model and probably something that's more reasonable for us to be able to afford right now.
Councilor Wilson?
Being a former corrections officer with Lane County, I'm familiar with some of the programs that Chief is talking about when it comes to community service. There's weekend crews that show up for people that work during the week, but they have restitution they need to pay, or they have some time that they need to serve, and maybe just a week's worth of time. They show up on the weekends to serve that time. That way they can still do their jobs. And then there's road crews that things like that the sheriff's department runs.
One of the advantages to booking them into sorry, that's me. To booking them into the county jail and prosecuting in circuit court once they're sentenced to do their time in the county jail, then the sheriff's office, who they have a much more robust corrections program, obviously there, they do become eligible for the same programs that everybody else does. So if they can mandate them for community service in Lane County and through their programs there. So there is a greater level of accountability, even if they serve fewer days in jail, but then they're out doing work crew stuff or community service through the programs that are managed through the sheriff's office.
Another one they have is a work release program where they actually have a facility there that's adjacent to the jail where they stay there. They can go to their job, but they got to come back there. Yeah. They spend
and they become eligible for those programs like any other inmate. So,
Councilor.
Madam Chair, thank you. So there's two different sections kind of pertaining to vehicle maintenance. There's the fuel and lubricants, and then there's vehicle maintenance and repair. Is there a reason the lubricants are separated from the vehicle maintenance portion?
It's been in the budget that way. That was what I inherited when I got here, that line item in there. And so I think what that is just probably your basic service maintenance where it's just oil changes and fuel. And then the other maintenance for your vehicles, that's more significant maintenance. That's not just, your regular service stuff is probably is built differently. But the fuel and lubricants is going to be your basic oil change and gas.
And then do you have a number on what was spent in the 23-24 for just fuel in itself?
I'm trying to find it. The actuals are in there. So when you look at 38, 363.
Well, it says 38,363, but I'm assuming that's probably including the lubricants also.
Fuel and lubricants, yes, that's.
Do we have an idea of what was spent on fuel solely? Mounting oil or transmission fluid or?
We could probably get you those numbers, but I don't think we have them in front of us.
No,
Okay, because one of my concerns is especially with the newer vehicles that was just purchased. Is the idle hours.
Yep.
And I had expressed a little bit about that just before we had actually received them. On whether or not these newer vehicles had a low voltage regulator on them. To where battery level got low, they'd automatically start to where they wouldn't have to sit out there and idle for 12 hours.
they don't have that.
You know,
No. So one of the things that, in fact, I was at Albany PD, I don't know, a couple months back, looking at some of the stuff that they're doing there. They have a newer building, but when they built their new building and they built their parking in the back, they actually have a covered parking area that has, it's wired for them to plug the vehicles in. So when they pull in to idle their, or to turn their vehicles off, they don't have to idle them. They plug it in, all the electronics keep running. So it's on a system that is always, it's like plugged in when they pull in, cords hang down. You get out, you're going to go in and write reports. You can turn the engine off. Your electronics keep running and they plug them in and have them charged and ready to go. So when they jump in the car, everything is booted up and ready to go.
I'd love to see if we can look and see how, even if we don't have a cover, but maybe setting something like that up for the cars where they don't have to sit out here and idle for 12 hours. Because that would help lower the fuel cost, maintenance cost. Because one of the challenges for a gas motor is to sit in idle.
Yeah. And that's just, I mean, that is industry standard. It's something that is a challenge. And that's the example I gave you with Albany is just an idea that they use to get creative to try to solve that issue. I don't know how much that infrastructure would cost for us to try to retrofit something in our parking lot out here. I don't know.
All right, any further questions? Thank you. Move on.
The next department is the municipal court and also kind of the companion piece, the municipal court support services. In these two budgets, I don't think there's anything that is significantly changed. So I really don't have any specific highlights to point out, but I'll take any questions you might have.
Are we doing anything to try to improve on the fee collection in any way that we can do locally? Because we haven't been absorbing an amount of unpaid fines and stuff like that compared to what was cited from the court. But I know we're kind of limited on what we can do in the debt services department of that. But I'd love to see it to where we weren't issuing almost $350,000 in fines and only getting like 100,000 of that back.
As the law and procedures allow, that we do seek, to have people pay their bills. And we do turn things over to collections and, sometimes for some people, that's going to be a bigger incentive than for other people. But you're absolutely right. Our collection rate is, I think if you were to look at other cities, you'd find it to be similar, but it's actually pretty low.
Well, on that thought process, what would it take to, replace fines with community service? It's harder to potentially collect a fine, but obviously it's hard to get people to show up for community service infinitely. But maybe present that as another option. Like, is that in the same vein? Where you say, hey, obviously people aren't paying their fines, so we're going to impose in lieu of fines, community service. And then if they don't show up to that, is that a bench warrant?
Yeah, it would just be a bench warrant.
We're going to get like all of our sidewalks pressure washed. and weed eated and the city beautified potentially?
I think this may be more of a policy discussion for us to have with the city council rather than specifically a budget item, because it's certainly something we'd need to work with our prosecutor, our municipal court, and as you've heard from Public Works and from police this evening, something that we'd need to work out for us to find a way to supervise folks and operate that. So, what staff could do is essentially put together a proposal and bring it back to the council for discussion. That would be something that would be, involve a number of different parties, folks who really aren't at the table this evening, first to have that conversation. So what I'd ask that you do is bring that up at the next city council meeting. And, said staff will come back with some sort of a proposal. Maybe there's something we can work out with the county sheriff's department for supervision. I don't know. But it's certainly something we're going to look into.
So I appreciate that, but we are in, but I mean, if there isn't a budget for it, we would then have to pass a supplemental budget to create something if that was the policy that we needed. So I am interested to know, would we need to, bolster an existing budget in Public Works for a program that addresses our unpaid fines, that addresses the repeat offenders, the issues that we're having in the police force? It goes to the retention of police officers if you're not actually getting people held accountable. Are you saying that's got to be a policy, and then if we agree to that, then that would be a supplemental budget?
It might be. I mean, to the chief's point earlier, there is nothing in this year's budget to put together a program like that. And, as Faye said, we're trying to do some work with that in Public Works as well. But, it would probably require a budget, maybe a supplemental budget, or maybe we could find financing within the existing budget. But I really don't know what that amount is. If you were to ask me, should we budget $10,000 or $100,000? I don't know. I'd really want to talk with the judge and with the prosecutor and with the sheriff's department about maybe coordinating something with them, rather than shoot from the hip, back with, an actual proposal of something that could be implemented.
So if the legal, policing, and court question. So if they don't pay their fine, they're issued a bench warrant, or however that works. What happens after that? Are they then taken to the county jail? Are they just given another citation?
And honestly, I don't know on the fines when they're not paid, if they're turned into collections, or if they actually issue a bench warrant for them. I don't know for sure what the judge does with all of those cases. A lot of that is at his discretion. So,
is it to me as a normal person who doesn't deal with the legal system every day, I'd almost wonder, is there even a point in going out and dealing with petty crimes? Because we're spending money on you to go there, to fuel the overhead and everything like that, to issue a ticket for somebody to never even show back up afterward.
We're not going to stop going.
Well, no, I know.
I'm saying we're going to, I've said this, that's at the heart of what we do, right? And I know maybe there's this perception that because we can't hold those people accountable on the back end, that the police department's soft on crime, but I can tell you that we're anything but. We're fair and consistent, but we're all about going out and holding people accountable.
Well, the numbers
at the very least
soft on crime,
right?
By any means, but
we can't we just get to that point to where we can't control the back end of it. And it's,
right.
I've dealt with this my whole career. I've been doing this for a long, long time. And, you want to sit around the campfire with some police officers and we can share stories about, what we've done and the time that we spend out there on the street trying to hold people accountable, and then what happens when they get into the court system. So probably some significant philosophical differences. So, but yeah, there's frustrations there. But I think, as far as this budget discussion tonight, I don't think we're going to solve that. And I think the best way to do that is to continue as our elected leaders having those conversations in Salem and really seeing if there can be some changes made on a state level.
I
I think I might have seen some whispering, but so the idea of not even having this budget, this municipal court budget, and then the idea of seeing if there's a way to contract with the circuit court to handle all misdemeanors, since it seemed to be a little bit more effective anyway. Is that something we could pitch?
It's always an option. And it's certainly something that, that could be discussed with the district attorney's office. I've had discussions with them when we first started these initial discussions about them taking on misdemeanor prosecutions. One of the biggest challenges that they have is that they're significantly understaffed. And when I talk to our district attorney, Chris Perosa, he's showing me the data with the staffing issues that they have in Lane County with the number of prosecutors they have in the cases that they're already taking. So when we talk about, hey, can you add the misdemeanor caseload from Cottage Grove and do that? Not with their existing staff. So then the conversations becomes, well, if there's a contract and we hire somebody specifically to prosecute Cottage Grove's cases and we take those cases on, then that would be something that, would be an intergovernmental agreement of some sort, like we have the contract with Springfield for jail. You contract some of these services out and you have that discussion about what that looks like to take on, Cottage Grove's misdemeanor caseload and handle it all at the circuit court level. That's, I think, in my opinion, another one of those pretty high level policy discussions that would need to take place and have some serious thought into what that ultimately looks like. But I think your question was, is that possible? And I would say, yeah, it's possible to do that. And I think we could have that discussion, but we would have to have that. Obviously, I think that's not court. So I would, get some guidance from.
Go ahead, Alex.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to add the municipal court, it's not your budget. We're looking at you like it's yours. You're not the judge. And also, if we're concerned about failure to appear, failure to pay your fines, making people go to Lane County Circuit Court, which is in Eugene, is perhaps not going to help. But also that's a policy decision that should be explored.
Well, it would be nice to have someone who could speak to that question then with authority, if we can just do away with this municipal court budget, if it's not going to be effective. I mean, that's some savings right there. I'm trying to understand what the actual value right now is from this.
I think, again, the court budget is not mine, but I would say from my perspective, looking at that, if that's a direction that the city wants to go, and that's a direction that is given to explore that. Again, it's not my sole responsibility to take on the prosecution piece of it, but it's something that I would be happy to work with. But I would guess that it would take a while for us to get to that point, and probably not in this fiscal year, but maybe something that we look at as we try to figure out, what we do in the future.
I mean, this is definitely a different business model than the business model the city's been using for, any number of years. And was certainly something we can explore as a different business model. Yeah, that's a direction folks want to go in.
And there are successful prosecutions for traffic violations, DUIs, that do result in fines.
There was one
collected.
There was one today. I mean, yeah, so it's not all doom and gloom. So I'm glad you actually brought that up, because I don't want to sound like it's all doom and gloom. In fact, I talked to Ryan today, stopped by my office just to say hi, and told me that they were prosecuting a local person for DUI. The judge is sentenced under 30 days in jail. We are good for some people. There's just those super challenging cases that we're not able to hold accountable, and those are the ones that we're referring to the courts.
And it does sound like you have a plan for the frequent flyers. After they fail and do a number of failure to appear, then they get handed over to Lane County.
It's working better than it has when we first, I got here after the jail, but when I got here in September 2023, and where we've come, we started doing this, a few months back, and I think it's better than what we had.
I know with your weekly reports, there's a number of people that picked up on warrants that are transported to Lane County.
A lot of those are warrants that are outside of Cottage Grove anyway. They're crimes that are already being prosecuted or cases that are already in their jurisdiction. So.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to echo Councilman Merida, having sat in the court many times. It's not just misdemeanors that are there, it's all the violations, the traffic violations, and there is benefit. And I like the idea of moving towards more community service, allocating funds. I don't know that it needs a big policy change, but just it's a cultural shift too, using the Public Works Department to supervise, because we're not talking about violent offenses here for the most part, that don't need, supervision like a felony offenses do. And people having trouble getting up to the Springfield. I was here one time when someone who had not shown up previously to Springfield jail, for instance, 3 officers came in and took them away because he was supposed to serve a 10-day sentence and never showed up for that, which is another aspect I know you guys are working on. It's hard for people to get up there and to do that. So I like the idea of moving more towards addressing things locally than moving away. It's just that there's work to be done locally and making more accountability. And I think as long as we keep that conversation going, and that if the council decides that that's the direction they want to go in, is keeping it as local as possible for more accountability, rather than kind of doing away with it. I think someone else here could probably remember when that conversation with the municipal judge was had about what's the point of having, the system here because of these issues that we've been having to deal with. As long as we're not sweeping that issue under the rug and we actually pay attention and start, asking, where are we at with this? What are we doing? Are we moving in the right direction? Again, I love the idea when I heard that Public Works was starting to get people, community service. I think that's a really good step in the right direction. Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
Along the lines of supervision, retired police officers are often available for volunteer basis. And there are a number of them around. Just saying that's a potential for not taking up the time of public works people to supervise or police officers to supervise, but having community members that have experience in the field as a volunteer basis to supervise. Something to go into the conversation.
All right, any further questions, comments on this?
Okay, well, the next budget is our maintenance department. These are some extremely hardworking folks who provide all the maintenance, repairs, and services in our facilities and our parks. Here at City Hall, the city shop, the armory, the golf course, park restrooms. They make sure that we have paper products in the restrooms. I don't believe there's any significant changes in the budget from the current year to next year. So again, we'd be happy to take any questions or comments that you might have.
Thank you, Chair. The department operational objectives, the last one looks like it refers to shelters that are no longer operational. Can you clarify?
I believe you're correct in that. Yeah.
Is that? Okay.
The next budget deals with engineering. Again, I believe there aren't really any significant budgetary changes in this department. There's a lot of contractual services, of course, inspection services, and now working with developers and contractors. So if there's any questions, I think Faye and I'll probably tag team on.
More of a general question about kind of reserve funds. Can money held in reserve funds be in interest-bearing accounts? I think I heard recently that there's been some state rule changes where things that couldn't previously be held in or interest-bearing can now.
Well, it's my understanding that the majority of the funds of just about every city in the state are in the state pool, which is invested according to state law. And there are some situations, I think, where you can be, there's a very small group of other things that you can invest in. CDs, fixed asset, fixed. Trust me, that wasn't my stomach. I had no. Fixed rate of return. I mean, it's just, we can't go by derivatives with it. But it's just, there's very, very specific state statutes of what we can and can't invest in.
And I would just add that, yes, that our reserve funds are invested in it. They do earn interest.
Yeah.
One of the changes maybe that you're referring to is that we used to hold, when we do projects, we have a retainage we keep. We now are mandated by state law to set up over projects over a certain amount. We have to set up a separate account, hold that retainage in, it earns interest. And then when the project is completed and the retainage is released, that money goes to the contractor that wants to work.
Any other questions? Councilman?
It's not necessarily a question, but in regards to public works, with the amount of parks and everything we own or have a part of, I'd like to see it explored a little bit about outsourcing the maintenance of the parks, whether it be the mowing, the street sweeping. I know a lot of people would say that it might cost more, but we don't have the amount, we wouldn't have the amount of overhead we do if doing it ourselves. With the employee cost, the fuel cost, equipment cost, the maintenance cost. So I'd love to see it if we can look at outsourcing some of that.
Sure, Councilor Lamberman, I can probably provide you with some costs where we actually did contract with the street sweeper. Our street sweeper was down for extended period of time. It was about 3 months because we couldn't get parts, and we contracted for that service. I will tell you, it was way more than what it costs the city to do the work when you figure in all the costs and the maintenance. You'll also see that the brand new street sweeper that we purchased this year has saved us tremendously in maintenance costs. The former sweeper, which had a different type of a mechanism for sweeping, it was more of a broom sweeper that swept to a conveyor belt. The new is more of a big vacuum cleaner, and it's amazing. I bet our maintenance costs have reduced by 75%. You know, it's new, but it's certainly easier to work on, cheaper, parts are cheaper, and the cost, but I can share with you what we spent for contract services over a period of time, and I'll show you that it's cheaper to do at city. I have not explored the costs of using services for contractual services for landscaping, but we have used contractual services for custodian work. And once again, I'll share with you the quality of work that our custodians are doing was much greater. The consistency, we found that we had individuals that were rotating out on a regular basis in the contractual with the private business versus our business. And we were able to call them up, and our employees, we can call them in to address things where that's difficult from a contractual services. So there's pluses and minuses, but I'm pretty sure I can share with you that there's probably not much, if any, savings contractually or cost wise.
Any other questions?
Any other questions on engineering? Moving on to Brian.
Can I just add one thing in the engineering budget that I want to make clear? This engineering budget is for engineering items that for review of business or building permit plans, planning documents. There's contractual inspections for subdivisions that where private contractors install public infrastructure, those things are ran through our budget. Also, our project manager is paid for through this budget. We do have other engineering costs, and those are associated with specific projects. So we do have engineering costs for the Main Street project. We have engineering costs for park projects, Cleveland Street. Those engineering costs are accounted for in the reserve funds or the enterprise fund that's paying for that project. So I want you to be clear that this is not the only place that branch engineering receives compensation for their work.
Page 26, general fund. I'm wondering why employee medical exams and tests wouldn't be covered under insurance and why it would have its own line.
Because that specifically, Counselor, is for folks that have CDLs. We get called up at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning and they say, XYZ, you report to your drug test. And that's where we keep track of paying for those expenses. They're not eligible expenses to be paid for out of their healthcare.
Any other questions? If not, broadband services. The city contracts with the Lane Council of Governments for IT services. They are essentially our IT department. And this year we made a significant change. For a number of years, the city has contracted with EarthClick to manage our fiber optic system throughout the city that's used by businesses, schools, and government agencies. And we transitioned to working with LCOG to manage that system. And that's why you see the contractual services number significantly decreasing under the materials and services. And take any questions you might have.
Is there anything in this broadband that ties with the previous Wi-Fi system we had in the city that's no longer operable?
I don't know the answer to that. What point I can certainly do some research, but I think it's
the receivers are still on quite a few of the poles around town.
This is my time, so I'm not familiar with this, but I could certainly look into it.
Counselor, that system was shut off a year ago. It was no longer operational.
Are you paying anything for a non-operable system? That's what I'm asking.
The only thing that we would pay is that if we have an opportunity to remove those Wi-Fi, that's our staff going out with our bucket truck and trying to take those Wi-Fi units down, or if there's a light bulb changed on a pole that has one, we just try to remove it. So there's some incidental costs that, yeah, our staff time to do it, but we're not paying a contractor to do anything, and there shouldn't be any additional costs related to that system in the budget.
Any other questions on broadband? Under community development, the biggest change that I would point out again would be in personnel services. You'll notice a decrease in costs there. That is due to the restructuring of the department that we discussed on Tuesday night. And I would also point out on the second page of the budget on page 41, you'll notice that there were a couple of large grants that we applied for last year. We didn't receive the $750,000 Paul Brana grant. So if you're wondering why the total amount for community services was 1.5 million this year and about $500,000 next year, it's really in those grant funds that the city did not receive. We budgeted for them last year if we got the revenue, and we didn't. So that's the reason for the significant difference in the total expenditures.
Was that for the economic development director kind of position?
That was the reorganization was eliminating the community development director position and adding a second land use planner. Yes.
Does the community development now, that section, report to the city manager's office or public works?
Yes, they report to the city manager's office. They're right next door. Any other questions on community development? If not, we'll move on to library services.
Yes.
Excuse me.
So I had a note about, I think you've already explained it, but there is no position for community development director as a vacancy now. It's going to be covered by the planning staff.
The position, there is, we did not budget for a community development director. If you look back, I don't want to, if you look back at the organizational chart that we showed on Tuesday night, we have promoted someone from our building department to essentially be, I'll call it a middle-level management position, then reports to the city manager. And we did add a second land use planner to be able to handle the workload. We added more people that work and less people that manage. Let's put it that way.
Thank you.
John, thank you, Chair. I just had a question on the RAIN development program, 21,000 on that. I thought I saw somewhere that it was going to be evaluated after 3 years. Where did I read that? To see its effectiveness. Where did I see that? Does anybody else remember reading that? And I'm wondering if that had been done. Is it a viable program? The Entrepreneurial Developmental Program RAIN, 21,000 on the Community Development Fund. Imagination, perhaps.
Well, the RAIN program gives a annual report to the city council. And I can certainly provide you with copies of that report, and you can see what work they've been doing. To your question about whether or not about their effectiveness, I think that's more of a value judgment to be made off of the work that they've done, and do they add the value for the cost? But I can certainly provide you with those materials.
Thank you.
The next budget is for library services.
Your foot.
And again, I don't think there's any real significant changes from the operations that we have this year. I would just note that during this last year, we did have a vacancy in the library. We did not fill that vacancy for reasons as I discussed on Tuesday night. And as a result, we did reduce the level of service by not being open on Saturdays. We are going to try to fill that position by the end of this fiscal year because it plays an integral role in our summer reading program. But again, I think that's emblematic of the way that staff is addressing this budget, that just because we have a vacancy doesn't mean that we're automatically going to fill it. We do an analysis to determine whether or not we can leave the position open, and sometimes that results in a reduction in level of service.
I don't remember, but it looked like the head count went up from last year. I'm not remembering why.
We have the same, well, it's the same number of folks budgeted for as previous years.
Okay, I just looked at the count for last year and this count's higher. And I was trying to also understand the overall increase. Is that just reallocation of money, or is that due to expected raises or?
I think the overall increase is largely due to the personnel services line item. But it is not an increase in actual number of bodies, but it definitely is. And as we discussed on Tuesday night, part of what's included in this budget is proposed wages for represented employees, which is the majority of city employees, although all 3 of the labor contracts, which expire at the end of this year, are still currently under negotiation.
Eric, were you able to get those numbers for us from the breakdown of the employees? You still just have a giant number with.
Yeah, I did on some sheets.
Yeah.
We didn't see that on there. I have to see position. Maybe I didn't get that piece.
I don't think it had it broke down by individual.
That's what we wanted is, so when we got 6 FTEs.
Yeah.
This FTE makes this much, this one makes this much.
Yeah. we have those, he provided those sheets. I don't know, did we not make? Or they're not copies of them that were out there? I believe.
Employee position. No. It's not by employee.
Sorry, lots of paper.
Personal.
You guys can- I don't know if you.
Marie.
I got the thing. A library. Breakdown.
I thought that was in.
Here.
It's not
They
the-
want a different.
Here.
But.
The breakdown of the individual.
More specific to positions.
4.02 staff members or something.
It's just right here. Yeah.
There's two PDFs in there.
And then looking. This.
Yeah.
Around noon.
Yeah.
It was around noon or two.
Sorry, guys, it's been one of those days. We were provided that by Eric, and we will get it for you.
Librarian.
Other questions, comments in library?
Here. This is what you're looking for.
Are there any questions on the library?
Yeah, first.
I might just not be seeing it, but do we charge for library cards?
Me with outside.
What? Not within the city, no.
Someone outside this.
Natasha, you want to talk about library cards?
Charge, that would be. Good. But yeah.
So for in-city, the general fund pays for the cost of all the households outside of the city. We charge $60 a year per person. If they're under 62 years of age, if they're 62 years or older, they get a discount of $40. It's about the equivalent of 2 brand new hardcover books at this point.
Could we start charging even half of that for within the city to help
That would certainly,
revenue for the library?
that would certainly be a policy decision to be made by the city council. If that is something you're interested in having staff explore, I'd ask that you bring that up at a council meeting and staff look at that as a potential policy.
Well, I would like to see that, so I'll bring it up.
As a side note, regarding charging people for library services, right now, the Friends of the Library actually sponsors advocacy cards for people who can't afford it. And we have at least 23 people who signed up in the past 5 months. So I don't think it's feasible to charge people extra fees for something that's supposed to be an access cost savings measure.
I think he was asking about charging for library card in
So,
city limit.
and that's,
Like a nominal $5 fee or something.
and that's, like I said, that's really a policy discussion for elected officials to have.
Just the card, not the services.
I just like, I don't go to the library, but I'm still charged for it in a way, so might as well charge people to go to the library, even a small amount to go there. That's all I'm saying.
I does say that's certainly an issue that we can explore. So that's,
I ask, do we know how many in-city library card holders there are? Off of the top of my head, it's about between 18 and 1900. Card holders. Remember that historically, we were only doing household cards rather than individuals. So there are a lot of people that they have one card that they use for their entire family, and some families will get one card for each person. So if we charge $5 per card holder, 1,900 times 5 is $8,500. I mean, it doesn't make a significant difference. No. In our budget.
It helps.
Okay, thank you.
So just to touch on the performance measurement sheet, down near the bottom, it shows the number of library cards in city for 24-25 was 1327. Out of the city was 317. And the estimated for 25-26 was 1,800 and 345.
Any other questions on the library budget? Moving on to community services. This is our community center budget. And I would note the biggest change of all is in personnel services. We're going from 2 FTEs to no FTEs within the community center. And we're going to be treating our community center going forward, mainly the same way that we do the armory for any sort of short and long-term rentals. I'd note that one of the 2 positions did transfer over to become the deputy city recorder in the city manager's office, and the other position was eliminated.
So is in the day-to-day management of the community center, while there was staff there available, is that going to fall to other departments, some of the things that were done?
As I said, we're going to be treating the community center kind of the same way that we do the armory. Traditionally, the armory was managed out of the city manager's office by the city recorder. Of course, a lot of maintenance folks and other departments also worked with it, and Public Works was very involved. That's how we plan to treat the community center going forward. The difference being is that at the community center, we do have full-time, long-term tenants, not just short-term tenants. So the deputy city recorder is currently responsible for handling all of the rentals at the community center and at the armory.
Thank you.
I'll let Mindy pass this out and let everybody take a look at it and see if, I believe this was addressing the issue that Danny was raising.
It's just, it's definitely needed.
I have my annual eye exam next week. I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to it, actually.
I had never had one before.
Oh,
You're going to donate that?
Eric, you've probably seen it enough. Do you know the copy?
Thank you. I think this is what I was looking for before.
And I apologize that we did not get this to you when you came in this evening.
Make one comment real quick. Just got these. Everybody keep in mind, the median income for the city is 63,000.
Excuse me.
I said, since we just got these, and we can actually kind of see what the pay scales are here. Keep in mind, the median income for our city is 63,000.
Yeah, and this is not fully loaded. This is
Total compensation.
Right. This is just their pay, not everything else they get.
Thank you.
Is this the proposed, is this correlate to the proposed budget line items?
Yeah.
This is 2025, 2026. And again, same caveat that I gave before, that the majority of the positions on here are bargaining unit positions and labor contracts that have not been settled.
Is there an indicator of what's filled and what's not currently?
On the spreadsheet.
That'd be helpful.
There's one that's a question mark. I wasn't sure what that was. Under maintenance worker one. Is that just another maybe maintenance worker?
It's probably a job title question that I have.
Oh, okay. Okay, but it's still under public works.
Yeah.
Do we need more time to digest or should we move on to the next one? I think it's community promotions.
Yeah, the next department is community promotions. And I just want to highlight a couple of things. First off, that the community pool support is being proposed at $75,000, which is the same amount that it was in past years. And I had a question about the Eugene Symphony fundraising. This last year, we were able to fundraise $13,700 of the total cost of the project of $25,000. And then the bottom number under materials and services, Spirit of Bohemia Mining Days. I would note that this is a new request for $10,000. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have.
How much rural tourism marketing program funds do you receive from the county? In this fiscal year, how much did you receive? You wouldn't know for next year.
What's the sec?
Give me it exactly. Should be on the, yeah.
It'd be in general fund revenue. Maybe in state and local grants?
Probably it's online, but I'm not seeing it pop out there.
We get a reminder of what that is. Like I ask every time, but I forget.
Does that come through the room?
Transient room tax. Transient room tax.
Yeah. That room tax,
Under
I should say, I don't know whether it's part of the room tax or not, to be honest.
Where's room tax?
Room tax is up at the top.
Oh, that's it.
No, that's transient room tax.
Yeah, room tax.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would think that would come through room.
yeah.
So we received 125 or budgeted about $125,000 in room tax, which is rural tourism marketing program funding. You're only allowed to use for certain rural tourism marketing activities. And that probably feeds most of the community promotions.
Yeah, let's just say the Chamber of Commerce also is included under that. Is the 45,000 that they receive. Is what you're asking, how do we track that?
No, I'm just asking, like, when you consider the community, what the community promotions budget is and the revenue that we get specifically for that. Just comparing.
Okay.
Meaning a large percentage is covered.
Yeah.
So there's just a little bit left over that.
Yeah.
needs to fill. Okay. Counselor Wyman?
So this might not be necessarily in the scope of kind of what our city staff looks at. But between the Eugene Symphony and the Spirit of Bohemian Mining Days, does anybody kind of have an idea of which one brought in more revenue to the city?
I think it'd be hard to track, but go ahead.
Counselor, the symphony is free.
No, I understand that, but
Oh.
people come here, they pay for food, gas, stuff like that. Same thing with Bohemian Mining Days.
So it's difficult to track those things, but you're absolutely right. I think our restaurants do very well on the night of the symphony, both before and afterwards.
I guess I'm just trying to see, you said we were able to fundraise, what, 17,000?
13,700.
13,700. And then it cost. Where'd it go?
11,300 was what?
What we paid out, which is a little bit more than what Spirit of Bohemian Mining Days is asking for. So I guess what I'm wondering is, would we be better off contributing that money to a longer event like the Bohemian Mining Days versus a couple hours one day a year?
That's certainly a budgetary question you can ask.
I have asked this question of two different AI kind of based insight service providers, Zardico and Placer. And Zardico was able to get the information that I don't have off the top of my head right now, but through Travel Lane County. So that is something I think that we could ask them specifically to be looking at and provide reports on it, because they do that through, I think the chamber has a relationship. But they can, Zardico does a better job, I think, of quantifying the spend data, because they track it with credit card spends, where did they go, where did they come from? But both of those definitely brought in money. Right. And I remember the conversations in previous budget cycles about how it's only locals coming in from Bohemian Mining Days. That's not true.
No.
And the data showed it, and like far range, and there was a lot of spend data. So I think it'd be worthwhile getting that actual data presented. But my takeaway was certainly Bohemian Mining Days brought in a fair amount of revenue. And how did I think of it? I didn't actually do the Eugene. I think we did concerts in the park in general, so we could zoom in on the day and find out more about that. But it's not just about the revenue generated. I don't think is the case being made for the symphony. It's kind of the introduction to the cultural experience as well, and what that can inspire. But so it's not just a monetary argument.
Yeah, I asked a similar question about a lot of these line items last year, and there's very strong emotion towards the symphony. And so it's obviously builds goodwill and like historical significance and people coming out of town for the first time, like all of these things that are very emotionally driven. And so I think there's a lot more to it than the revenue aspect of it for such a small amount in this department relative to the massive spend on admin. Like, I'm not even going to spend time on this anymore from what I learned last year because it's so insignificant, yet provides so much value to the actual people who live here.
Do we have any sort of idea on the attendance levels? It's huge. Well, I know the symphony draws in quite a few. But same thing with Bohemian Mining Days. I'm just curious, like, is it comparable, or is one just blowing the other one out of the water kind of deal? Or
rather than just kind of shooting from the hip on something like that, I think we have statistics on who came to concerts in the park, came to the symphony, came to Bohemian Mining Days last year, or should I say Spirit of Bohemian Mining Days last year. We can certainly provide you with that data. To Councilmember Aaron's point, there's plenty of, I call it creepy cell phone data. It's been generated by the chamber and by travel agencies in the area that can show you the number of people who come to town for those events. They're huge draws, And, when people tell you that, well, it's just, people in Cottage Grove going to Bohemia Mining Days, that's simply not true. And we have the data to show that.
I just know Bohemia Mining Days used to be huge. Granted, yes, it has some falling apart in the last couple of years, and it kind of rebounded last year, but
I have
it's a huge thing.
I have a lot of faith in the folks who, I'm not going to sing Matt's song, he can do it for himself. But I have a lot of faith in the folks that are working on Spirit of Bohemia Mining Days. I think it's going to be a great event. It's going to be very successful.
Well, and what I can say is it doesn't just draw in tourism, because that was the fight that people said, no, it's just locals that go. But what I can tell you is people come home that have moved away for Bohemia Mining Days. It's a tradition. And so I love getting behind
There's a lot of class reunions that are planned around.
Bohemia Mining Days. Mhm.
Johanna, thank you. A couple of questions on the Spirit of Bohemia Mining Days. Are they asking for in-kind donations? Because that wasn't clear. It's just a straight.
The city provides significant in-kind donations currently to Bohemia Mining Days. Everything from our Public Works Department and overtime for our Public Works Department, our Police Department, overtime for our Police Department. We provide them with generators. We provide them with the fuel for the generator. We provide them with the electrical and the wires hookup. But as outlined in the letter you have in front of you, this is additional funding that's being requested specifically for those additional items. But the city will still be providing the same level of in-kind support that we have in the past.
Yes, I guess my question is, okay, so part of this is going towards Bucks units. For instance, if the city had the contract to provide Bucks units at a much, or we're just giving them cash and they're going to get those services. Does that, you understand what I'm saying? Are they contracting that out or getting those services somewhere else? If we're just giving them the cash, does that make sense? Right? I mean, I know the city has a good deal, for instance. And if they're going to be providing in-kind services already, does it make sense to just provide these other services in kind as opposed to cash and have them cost more from that? So you know what I'm saying?
And I would say that we don't have a contract other than a cleaning contract for Bucks toilets. We just, the symphony, when the symphony comes, we just call up the vendor and have them deliver.
So it's pretty much the same. Okay.
In the past, but I would say that the city does have several Bucks toilets that were used for sheltering purposes that could be available to be used. The other thing that happens for Bohemia Days is that we order all the traffic signs, the type 1s, and the cones for the various different parking restrictions during the parade or around Pointer Park. We facilitate that, but they turn around and pay us for that.
Okay, now I know the city does a lot for BMD. I think that's great, yeah. My other questions, if we've already raised a certain amount for the Eugene Symphony, but we're putting the full amount, budgeting for the full amount there, instead of just kind of subtracting what we've already got for it?
Well, the amount that, the amount that.
It was last year.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was last year that we fundraised that.
Okay.
We are in the process of fundraising for this year.
Hopefully we'll get more.
And can I just note, the way the budget works is the revenue, all the revenues on the general fund beginning couple of pages, and then you have to budget the expenditure too, or you can't do it. Whether it's gonna balance out to zero, they're just in different places.
Two things before Shane falls asleep on me over there. I want I'm sorry, Shane. I just wanted to get
You can do some push-ups.
do some push-ups for Shane. Clarification on, there was a comment made tonight too, that the public swimming was going to go away if they didn't get this money. Then I've talked to several people who said that's not true. Can you shed some light on that? If this did not.
lost my hearing in the Navy, so can I get your question again?
Yeah. The 75,000, if you did not get that, is the community swimming going away?
Well, I can't make that decision, Danny, but I would recommend a reduction or an elimination of the community programs if we didn't have that money.
Shane, can you speak in?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Please.
So I'm curious.
Hello.
So it would impact the municipal.
Yes, Danny. I mean, it's not my decision to make, but I would recommend a reduction or an elimination of the community programs if we didn't have that money from the city.
They're both ways. I just want to hear that from you. So.
Yeah. Yes.
I believe last year there were suggestions about seeing if the school district could pitch in more. Any of those conversations had in the last year?
Can you say again, Amber, please?
Sure, yeah, I think it was suggested seeing if the school district could pitch in more to offset what we were considering reducing. When we were discussing it last year, have there been any conversations in last year about the school district pitching in more than they are now?
Well, I mean, our total budget's over like $400,000. That's public knowledge. But the community programs cost $272,000 out of the budget, the total budget of the pool. I mean, I can't speak for them, but I can if you would like me to.
Yeah, it was brought up last year, and if it hasn't happened,
Did you bring it up with me?
No, I wasn't the one who brought it up. I was just remembering.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think it would be great to see if maybe there's additional that could be covered by the school district.
Shane, your 272,000 of your budget, does that, is that offset by Medicaid, or is that like, or is that just your?
Candace, that's, if you look in our projected income from the pool, Medicaid, some people are on insurance, and those are all negotiated contracts, and I think they're too low, to be honest with you. But I'm not a negotiator. I would really work to get those when they come to the pool, instead of paying like $3, how about $5? You know, get that up a little bit. I would recommend that.
Your fees, and how much does it, I guess, making my question a little clearer, out of that 272 budgeted, how much is offset by your dues and your class?
We project 140,000.
Okay.
In fees.
I see.
And then, you know, it's in the information that I gave at the council meeting. And I can tell you from experience, we're doing pretty good. You're talking about recovery rate. How much do we recover from how much does it cost? And we're doing very good. And I would like to do better. Yes. Yes, Mr. Urban.
Yeah, thank you. When I had the opportunity to visit recently and speak to, I think, one of the.
Yeah, she was number 2 up there. I was at the doctor.
It mentioned that not all of the schools have an agreement to be able to utilize the pool. I was wondering if you could expound on, like, ACE was one.
I think what you're talking about is a charter school. So there's 2 charter. We don't have a relationship with the charter schools, and I would like to have one. And if we have time to fit them in the schedule, learn to swim, would be great. I would say yes. Let's do that.
What is
It's like any relationship. You pick up the phone. Hello, how are you? Can I get the kids in my school, say the leader of the charter school, can I get them in swimming at the pool? They talk to a person like me, and I see if we can make that happen.
So it's scheduling.
Yes, scheduling table. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's kind of scheduling. Like I said, I've been here 2 years, and they said these are the schools that I got to cover, but we can explore that question. And I'm an advocate for people learning how to swim.
Yeah.
I'm the greatest advocate, so.
And the other piece that I wasn't clear walking away was kind of the percentage of time consumed. You know, there's only so much time in the day and week.
Yeah.
Can you speak to the, percentage of the time that the schools that are, involved are utilizing the pool versus the public?
Well, the school uses the community 40 hours a week. Yeah, and then, and the school district's probably less than that. Yes.
So the community has the lion's share of the time.
Yes.
But isn't compensated, but this isn't commensurately compensating.
Well, the school district programs, is me. I teach all the kids. We don't, when you're teaching people how to swim, you don't need a lifeguard or that type of thing. But when you rec swim or the exercise classes, you need a couple lifeguards and that sort of thing. Yes. So does that answer the question?
Is the 40 hours
I actually cut
staff time or?
No, that's like real time. That's how much time the community programs take. And I actually cut that down from the previous year. Like when I got here, it was like 48 hours. So I cut it down a little bit to get that recovery rate closer to 100%.
It's kind of getting to the same questions of the city's contributing 75,000. I understand there to be 272,000 in expenses related to community time.
Yeah.
There's an obvious gap there. So of the fees, what's, to the user fees to the public, that's what's making up the gap at the moment for the community time.
Well, I would look at it like this. The city's getting a great deal. For $75,000, you get $272,000 worth of services. That's a pretty good deal. That's the way I see it.
So the community doesn't pay anything.
The community, all the community does. But
Okay, so the community does.
We project the community will pay $140,000 next year.
I guess I'll restate it. Is the community being subsidized outside of the city's contribution?
Yes, by the school district.
To the tune of about how much?
I can get back to you on the exact number. I don't really like to guess, Mr. Urban. Can I get back to you tomorrow or the next day? Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Meredith?
And Shane?
I'm starting to sweat. Yes.
So the most percentage of the cost for doing the public swim or the classes is providing the lifeguard services, which.
Well, our biggest cost is people. And I can tell you that most of them, almost all of them make minimum wage. You know what I mean? But it's not, it's safety, safety, lifeguarding. And then I'm an operator. It's a complicated machine. Pools are very complicated. And so that's the biggest cost.
So the city's contribution is help subsidizing lifeguards primarily, and that allows the public to use the pool.
Yes.
Jane, before you leave that podium,
What?
before you leave the podium, can you share with how great the kids did this year?
Oh man, the kids were so good. You would have been proud of our kids. When I met the team, they were like, if you've ever been to SeaWorld, they were like a killer whale with a droopy dorsal fin. They're just kind of swimming around. And I'm like, how's the mood of the team? Not well. That's what they told me. And I just said, well, we're going to start getting better. And it took a while. It did, but wow, they were so great this season. We had won a championship for a while. It was a lot of fun, and I thought they could do it, and they actually went out and did it. That was pretty special for them. I think they'll remember that, like when they're sitting around when they're my age, going, "Yeah, we did that." That was pretty cool.
We just want to say that it's, we just have to do our due diligence because our city is really tight on funds. We're all support our pool.
Yeah.
It's just, we have to really look at our bottom line and our numbers. It's, we definitely support our pool and everyone.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I've always felt that in Country Grove. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Can I go home now?
Yes.
Can I go home now?
Thank you for coming.
Thanks a lot. Farmers market. My understanding was that when we started this some time ago, that was a help them get their feet under them and help them to get started and going. And my understanding is they're in the black now and they've actually got a full-time person hired. They're paying. I just wondered if that's something we could maybe use those funds, either save some money or use it somewhere else, especially since we have all this construction downtown. I know that the chamber and some of the organizations that are helping with keeping the businesses going could use a little more funds for advertising and pulling people in downtown. So I thought about that one aspect. Is there anybody here from the farmers market?
Chair, I just want to know, I remember we talked about this last year and the person from the farmer's market said they use some, in order to get certain grants, you have to have match, and they use this money for match to get other grants.
Yeah, they did, but they're not here to tell us if they're doing that, so we don't know.
Thank you. Along those lines, I just want to make a comment about, I think several of these are, it shows this buy-in, when the city contributes money, it shows, like you're aligned with their values. And although I think it's a great opportunity to be able to show support, we have to also look at the bottom line. And, is there a way to not say, have that buy-in or the matching grant? Is that really the responsibility when we have to be doing the due diligence? Could we be doing it in-kind donations, for instance, instead of larger amounts? And we saw a couple of years ago, that was a big controversial issue of having that buy-in with $100,000, which is something that a lot of people are still not happy about and we're wary of. So I just are we setting a precedence that when community organizations are coming and asking for support, I think it's great to help get them going and be a catalyst for them to be successful. But at that point, I think it makes sense for the city to offer along the lines more of something that's very nominal and or in-kind donations as opposed to a large, monetary contribution for that. It's just my 2 cents on that. Thank you. Or 4 cents. 5 cents.
Might I suggest we reach out to the farmers market and ask them to be here on Thursday? Respond to the rationale about requiring this
to this day, or
I mean, the next Thursday, the following meeting. I'm assuming we'll have one.
We can certainly invite them to the meeting. Yeah.
Any other comments on this?
On South Lane Wheels, as I recall, that is an LTD program now versus a city program. What are we doing with that then?
They're independent. They're not.
So it says South Lane Wheels / LTD on their buses. Right. It is.
They're affiliated with LTD.
So their main funding then is from Lane Transit District, but they're still needing some city funds.
Right. And I don't know if anybody's heard, but my mom tried to get a ride. She said she was going to move into town so she could do that. And they told her that they'd lost their funding for that, was going to go away. So I don't know when that's going away, but it's a
pilot.
They're changing their business model. Our LTD is changing their business model. And my understanding, this is a little outside my area of expertise, is it has to do with the loss of grant funds. But instead of doing rides on demand, they're now going to be basically having buses that take you to a point where you can transfer to get a bus to another point. And I've heard from a couple of different citizens that that's going to have a pretty negative impact on them because they relied on that, basically on-call bus service.
Well, so one of the things I'm noticing here is for many years, there would just be presentations. We'd get a one-time thing. It wouldn't show up as a line item. Then the next step, and it was discretionary each time, made a case for it. Certain things got added as line items, just be perpetual. But now we do have to say, do they even still need it? Otherwise, we don't think about it and it just happens. So it would be nice to know what is South Lane needing it for? Do they still legitimately need it. It would be nice to hear on each of these. I think some of us know some of the repeat ones, but Singing Creek would like
Looked
to.
them up and Larry, most of their stuff was actually not even in this area. There was some, but most of it's out of the area. They have a post office box here, but I didn't have a lot of information.
Did advance at the.
Just so everybody's clear, we did notify these groups at the meetings, whether the budget meeting was going to be taking place. But there's a little difference between notifying and inviting. And, we can certainly invite.
They do,
groups.
they've been here, all of them,
Yeah.
past, so it's,
We could set a precedence
Yeah.
where you just don't get anything if you don't show up. So they'll show up next year.
Make a case for it.
I was just kidding. You guys were way too serious.
No, I think that's really a good idea.
Somebody can make a motion.
I make a motion.
Just on one or in general?
I'm not gonna make a motion. I'm saving my energy for big motions, so you guys go ahead.
Wait for the.
Okay, then shall we move on?
The next department is Human Resources. The biggest change that you'll see in the Human Resources budget is in the Personal Services line item, where we're upgrading the position from being a manager to being a department director. I have to tell you that when I started working here, one of my priorities was to establish a professional human resources department. And we need someone with the skills to operate a professional human resources department. We're a small city, but we have 3 separate bargaining units. And when you look at what we have to deal with just the leave laws that the state of Oregon has that are conflicting and overlapping, those issues alone are really an easy way to get yourself in trouble. Now, the first rule of any kind of compensation analysis is we talk about the position, not the human being in that position. And that's what we're going to do this evening. We followed city's policy and past practices and compared ourselves to other comparable cities. And as I always say, we don't want to lead, we don't want to follow, we want to be somewhere in the middle. And so the salary that we are proposing is essentially the mid-range of those comparable cities. And one of the things I try really hard not to do, guys, is comment on any decisions or actions that were taken before I got here. But I think we all know that we've had issues with departments, especially the police department in the past. And I can't help thinking that if the city were to have employed a full-time professional human resources director who played a role in looking at those issues, we may have had a significant impact on reducing some of the impacts that took place. So that is the reason why it's a priority to me that we have a professional human resources department. Now, there's other departments where we've reduced our personnel costs, community development, community center. This is an increase. And this is why I believe that I think it's a value to the city and the organization. I think what we're talking about paying in salary is certainly something that we could save by avoiding some of the issues that have occurred in the past. So that's my sermon for the evening. My grandfather was an old-time fire and brimstone Presbyterian minister. I don't know whether he'd be proud of that or not. But this is the one department where we definitely are asking for an increase in salaries.
How much of an increase is this?
I'm sorry, I was like doing 2 things at once.
$4,000. How much of an increase, I think was the question.
The increase in the salary line item is from 84,000 to 118. And that includes a 3% COLA.
So I calculated that, I think it's 40%. I got that.
Again, we went through the city's established practice and also what our policy outlines, and looked at comparable cities. And we looked at both also the internal equity with other department director positions. And that's how we established that salary. Like I said, we don't want to lead, we don't want to follow. We want to be somewhere in the middle of our comparables.
Was that a hand up? Okay.
Just a note that on the breakdown that was handed out, it's a different figure for Human Resources Director. It's 115,382 here versus 118,411 on the proposed.
Looking at 0.01 position, so.
No, it's one. Okay, so is there,
It's a little bit more than one full-time position on the.
kind of taking into account some overtime or?
The difference is the sheet I handed out, or that you guys got today, FTE salary, and in this budget stuff, there's like a cell phone allowance. And
incidental.
Yeah, like other perks that people get that are taxable. Like the only one I remember seeing on the sheet was the cell phone allowance. So the stuff that you guys have is straight salary. And the FTE sheet.
Wasn't a lot of difference. I was just curious why there was a little bit of a difference there.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with the concept of having a professional in place and paying them appropriately. Just saying, just from my own standpoint.
Out of curiosity, what is the difference in responsibilities? It's a job title change, and so I just would like clarity on what exactly is entailed in that.
The big difference in the level of responsibility, I think you could see if you were actually participating in our labor negotiations, rather than just a support role of, I'll put together the data and give it to the folks at the table. Person in this role is playing a very big lead at the negotiation table, and also playing a big lead in implementing the contracts. I think it's the difference between of a manager and a director is someone who actually, through their expertise, is leading the department and not just managing the department.
So who did that before, Mike?
Well, it's my understanding that as few as a couple of years ago, Human Resources was just part of the finance department. And it was just a person, doing things like payroll. And they weren't playing any kind of a leadership role at all. It was really almost a technician position. And a few years prior to that, each individual department was handling their own recruitments. There wasn't anything kind of centralized recruitment or anybody making sure that we were following state and federal laws in how we were recruiting positions. In other words, we're going over the course of the last 3 or 4 years, we've evolved from having really no one doing human resources to now we have a professional who's playing a big leadership role in providing those services to all departments, handling all the recruitments. If there's a vacancy in Public Works, as few as 3 or 4 years ago, Faye was responsible for advertising the position, collecting the applications, doing the interviews. All that work is now being done by the Human Resources Department. So we need to fill a position, we need to upgrade, we need to review and upgrade the job description. We need to do salary comparison data. We need to see how is this going to impact, whether this position belongs in the bargaining unit, if it's a new position or not, to work with the business agents of the bargaining unit. All those aspects that you think of as a full human resources department are now being handled by one person, rather than they're really not being done at all because they were kind of distributed across the organization.
Craig, you had the question.
Sure. That embodied that question, my question effectively.
Annie.
I was being a smarty and then I forgot what I was going to say. So I'll reiterate that it's not about Mandy, it's about the position. So
absolutely.
In my field of work, when we create a new position or we give it a new title, we typically advertise and test for that to give some validity to it, not just promote somebody from within. I don't know what her qualifications are. And I did a little bit of checking on HR people and averages in Oregon. And there was a big difference between if you were what she was doing before was about 60 to 80,000. And then I think the school district's director is 130, but that person has 3 people under them. So directors usually have somebody they're directing. And I guess for us to jump 30-some thousand dollars, putting some validity to that as far as education degree and a process, I don't know, it's that typically what I know we did an assistant city manager at one point, and I think the city council had to vote on that position. So when you went from just being someone doing HR to making a department and a director, that's something the city council should vote on to make that position, and then we put money to it.
Well,
I would think so.
good point. No,
I don't know.
say no. Well, look, I went back and read the city charter. The city charter, in fact, I can read it to you. It says that the city manager appoints, supervise, and remove city employees, organize city departments and administrative structure. So, you know,
I'm here to say you can create a new.
am I overstepping my bounds? I suppose the 7 wise folks I work for could certainly, let me know that. But based on, again, based on reading the charter and looking at the city's past practices for how positions have been established, how salaries have been established for positions, that's how we pursued it.
A note that the previous city manager had some changes and things done to give a lot of power to the city manager. And so I don't know if that needs to be looked at or addressed. Not you personally, but I'm just saying that I remember changes being done such that it gave that position a lot more authority than might otherwise. And just having watched.
This is in the charter, if you just read the charter. So it's-
Yeah.
Oh, and look, you guys have worked with me for 1.5 years, you know me. I'm not going to recommend increases in salaries and positions. I'm usually the one cutting stuff. You know, you mentioned the assistant city manager position and others. We eliminated those. We restructured our community development department, our finance department, our community services department, in all those ways for reducing staffing and reducing, I'll call it, management and hiring more people to actually work. This is one situation where I feel very strongly that this city needs a full-time department director in our human resources department. And I think past history may show that there may have been some benefit to having had somebody in that position.
Sorry.
What would a fully staffed HR department look like?
Well, I understand that there's a certain amount of bleed over between our human resources department and our finance department. For example, payroll. We're in the process now of hiring somebody who's going to be our dedicated payroll person. That person leads back and forth between finance and the human resources department. One of the things that makes it helpful to have a human resources director who also has finance experience, and so they can work with the folks in the finance department. To answer your question directly, the city previously had a human resources manager and basically a second in command, a second person. Now, it's my understanding, and this is before my time, that the council hired that as a 6-month temporary position. So specifically to deal with the deficit that we had in the police department and recruitment in the police department. So I think for a city our size, a fully staffed department could include a human resources director, but also the understanding that they're going to spend a lot of time working with the finance department as well, just because of the bleed over between those two departments.
So would it make more sense to have people shifted under? Because it's a director role and you don't have a director role in finance. Would it make more sense for that responsibility to shift over and have some management responsibility?
Over time, we may do that. The payroll is one of those odd things that a lot of organizations will have payroll in their finance department, and a lot of them will have payroll in their human resources department. Initially, we're, at least for the organizational chart, putting it under finance. But the reality is that payroll person is going to spend an awful lot of time working in human resources. In fact, we have a second office in there, and they're going to be spending a lot of time in that second office.
Kind of to that point, though, we have cost allocations out the percentages, which is why we needed this chart. Is that being done right now to recognize where the expenses occurring? Like splitting the time of that payroll person through the departments?
I'm not sure exactly whether that's shown in the chart. I'm thinking more of operationally. Operationally, a number of the folks who work in the finance department are spending time working with the human resources director just because their duties and responsibilities bleed over into that. One of the models that you'll see some organizations have is a joint human resources director / finance director. That may be something that we come back and talk with you about.
I seem to recall Chief Chase saying that it's been extremely valuable to have a dedicated human relations person and guiding of the many processes it takes to secure an officer and the background checks and the evaluations.
I talked a little bit about this on Tuesday, where I feel like we've made some significant progress in areas where, when I talked to some of my colleagues around the state, even before I took this job, who said it was an impossible task and who still say that it's nothing short of a miracle that we're where we're at, that's in large part to having somebody dedicated to working in HR and doing all those things that Mike talked about, which is making sure that our job descriptions, some of them didn't even exist before I got here. And before, when I started working with Mandy, job descriptions, policies and processes in place to properly vet law enforcement personnel, contracts for background investigations and psychology services and medical evaluations. All that stuff was stuff that we've spent a significant amount of time together in the last year and a half building all that. There's no way in what I walked into that I would have the ability to do all of that stuff by myself. So, a significant amount of help doing all of that. And a lot of the time, I know Mandy spent a ton of time working specifically on it, just trying to help me dig out of where I'm at. So I think it's a huge help. And continuing to manage all the new leaves that have come out, paid leave Oregon, all of that kind of stuff, managing all of those aspects of, onboarding new employees and everything else to do things right, to do them professionally, and to reduce civil liability in the long run. I think it's important that we have somebody who is a director level person managing an HR department to really be overseeing it and doing it correctly.
To answer your question, Greg, looking at the breakout under finance, there's payroll specialist listed here, and it's broke out entirely over the whole group there. So yeah, there's definitely a breakout of the responsibilities, including under HR. There's some time.
But that was the 0.1.
Yeah, that's 1 point tracking and payroll specialist. It's broke out over the whole. The person that does payroll is doing payroll for the entire unit. So yes, they're going to be.
But it's contracting and payroll services. And we just were indicated that the phone reimbursement accounted for the 0.01 and the 1.01 FTE. So it wouldn't be that.
Any other questions on human resources?
I need a time check. It's till 8. What do we have?
The only thing we have left in the general fund is the internal support department.
We wrap that up and then decide what do from there.
Well, very quickly, the internal support department, the main issues with it are obviously that's where we hold things like our contingency, our unappropriated fund balances.
May I? So to be clear,
This year, there will be an increase of, call it 450,000. And more than that. Well, 450,000.
The contingency would be going from 405 to 450 per the city's policy.
Per the city's policy.
Of a 3% increase. And this is, and as we talked about on Tuesday night, I'm not sure that I believe that's adequate. And that's something I plan to talk with the council about later this year or in next fiscal year. Is about our contingency and our reserve policies, because I think they're a little low.
Little low. This is a deficit, basically. This is
that we don't. No, as we talked about on Tuesday, there's basically two amounts. There's what I'm calling the piggy bank. And then also there's the beginning fund balance, which is the money that we have in the bank on July 1st, recognizing the fact that we don't get our property tax revenue until December. So we've got to pay our bills and be able to, meet payroll until the property tax revenue starts coming in.
Sorry, go ahead. Well, I'd just like to have an understanding of whether the money coming in to the city equals the money going out.
It does not.
It does not. I mean, that was the point.
What is the point of a budget committee that we don't reach some point where what comes in goes out, but we don't spend more than that?
That's the point I was trying to make during my presentation on Tuesday night. We can pull that back up. We're running out of time here, but I could pull that back up and go through that presentation again if you'd like.
I don't need that. I would expect that a city manager would spend what he gets.
Well, and that's.
I just find that's a basic thing. And it seems like we're spending more than what comes in.
We're starting out the year this year with more than we started out the previous year. The reason for that is because we did not spend a significant amount of money filling all of our police department positions. We are budgeting to fill all of our police department positions this next year.
And we will be over budget by doing that.
And I tried to be as transparent as I could and make that point first thing on a Tuesday night. Now,
exactly.
Assuming
this budget committee is irresponsible. That it should be, and starting to get to the point where what you get, you spend. And if it means cutting departments, well, maybe not cutting, I don't know, but I think it's irresponsible to spend more than you get. And that we all agree to that is wrong. That's all I want to say.
We have the power to make motions for change. That is within our power. And so if we have adequate information, we should make appropriate decisions. Danny.
Mike, can we get a breakdown of this carryover? Because looking through some of this, I know some of the things that we're counting in that 4.5, some properties that didn't sell that are in that aren't going to realize in a grant. And we have a breakdown to see what that actually is to date, since we didn't get some of them, or not going to get some of those things, they're not going to materialize.
We can certainly provide that to you and understand that it's a bit of a moving number.
Yeah.
We actually just sold a property today. So,
one that wasn't going to sell, one that wasn't going to sell now did sell, or a different one.
No, it's one of the parcels in the Project Sparrow or
Yeah.
Cleveland.
We sold one of those today. So we can certainly do that.
That'd be good. That way, when I'm looking at that number, it's it's not so big and it's a little more realistic. Okay.
May I ask a question, as you consider what to do? We do have two individuals that have been waiting for an hour, from Waterworth to give a presentation online. They predict it to be about a 30-minute presentation. If that's too much time for council, they are available to come back and be present next Thursday at 6.
So it's 8:04. We haven't taken a break, but we didn't last time. We went to 9:30 last time. I don't know how much is anticipated left to get through. Usually I think this part goes faster. Are we done with internal support department? Okay, so we can make a decision. Do we want to take a 5-minute break? Do we want to recess? Or do we want to just blow through and have our presentation and move into the next section?
We're gonna try to get through this tonight, or what's next week look like? Because I know 2 of us are gone and maybe more of you are gone. So I don't know what our backup plan was for the next meeting. Anybody?
We're gonna zoom in.
Next Thursday, what I've heard from folks is that next Thursday evening would work for another meeting. Is that?
On Tuesday, but.
Yeah, I'm asking, is that going to work for folks? Is next?
Make it work.
I think I might be back by that. Leave early.
22nd.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear
I
you.
think I can be back. I think we'll leave early on Thursday. If it's gonna happen until Thursday, we can be here present.
I just think it's more productive to have everybody here rather than folks remote. So let's try to do next Thursday if we can.
Alex, you had something.
It seems to me we'll definitely need another meeting anyway, so maybe we just stop here, do wastewater at the beginning of Thursday.
Well, we have people who've been waiting, so should we
She's
get
saying,
them out?
they said they will come back and have put them towards the
They're
front.
available to come back next Thursday at 6.
Start them at the
beginning.
front.
I mean, I would just say as a matter of courtesy, since they've been waiting. Well, it's easy to do that.
I think it's better that you do it all at once where you have the presentation and then get into the budgets rather than wait a week and then we go back to, what were they saying last Thursday?
There are 2 people, hands up, so.
That's a good point.
I'm available until 4:00 in the morning. That's when
So maybe we need to do a show of hands too, once we continue on.
Till 4. I'm good.
And if we don't have enough, then we'll move on. So let's continue on.
Could go long next meeting too.
Okay, so I don't think that's the majority. So that sounds like we need to just recess then. And pick it up on Thursday. Should we estimate how much time is gonna be needed? Because I don't think we want a 4th meeting. So how much is estimated to get through for next Thursday?
Well, I think the presentation may take over half an hour, but then we should be able to, unless people have really large questions, we should be able to get through it in 2 hours.
Are we going to invite the people that were mentioned to try and invite?
We will invite them.
Okay. Yeah, so.
How long would it take for them to do their presentation and us to talk about their section? Could we get it done in an hour?
It's hard for us to estimate how long it will take you to, how many questions you'll have and how long the discussion will take.
I'm just saying generally, how long does it take to get through that section? This is my first budget meeting, so.
Usually it takes at least 2 hours to get through all of the
those funds.
It's going to take 2 hours to get through the presentation and also through the budget.
Get through the entire remainder of the budget, 2 hours.
Yeah.
You can still stop somewhere.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm saying if we put in another hour, could we hear the presentation?
Yeah.
And do part of the budget? That way, next meeting isn't.
We don't have
2 to 3 hours.
going into a 4.
I got a good point that if we did that, then we're gonna be waiting a week before we're gonna forget all what Waterworth has told us before we start talking about the budget again. I thought that was a good point, but
Director Stewart, do we have someone from Waterworks and from wastewater? Or,
So the individuals are from Waterworth, both of them.
What do they cover? Do they cover wastewater?
Oh, they're gonna cover, essentially, they've done an analysis of our expenditures and our revenues, our rates, and are making proposals, which Mike has already shared the increases in those funds to cover the operating expenses. They're gonna walk through that and show you the data that shares why those increases are necessary and the projections for the future years ahead.
Need to be fresh for that.
I do think there is a risk that we're not going to get through it next meeting, especially if other people show up and you have a hard deadline. So could we schedule a fourth? And I think the trade-off is have a fourth meeting potentially, or just get through it.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
To say if there's,
Tuesday.
if there's going to be a fourth meeting on Thursday, then the next day is Friday, before Memorial Day weekend. But
the other thing I can share is that I'm welcome for questions. If you have questions specifically about those funds that I can answer ahead of the meeting, that may help everybody move quickly, quicker. I can do my best to quantify those questions and hand out a document that shows all the questions that were asked by various members over this next week, if that's helpful too.
So when's the next scheduled meeting? Thursday or Tuesday?
Thursday, second.
Thursday the 22nd. Well, I make a motion to recess this meeting and reconvene Thursday, the 22nd at the proposed time.
Second?
second? Could I ask for a friendly amendment?
Sure.
That we prepare to have a long meeting on Thursday so that we can power through, so that we can avoid a fourth meeting.
Yes.
Order pizza.
I was gonna say, is there money in the budget for snacks?
All right, then I guess do we have a second?
There was a second.
Yeah.
All right, and all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we're recessed.
What's next?
All nighter.
thank you.
Make a move, otherwise.
We're gonna sit here.
Think it might be. Looming in front of us, so next time.
Honestly, I'd rather sit here until 9:30 again, like